It's time to go through the level 10 meeting function. So on the level 10 meeting page here, the first thing that you'll find is any headlines that have been created during the week. And to create new ones, you'll just use that same create button that we use to create any number of content in the account. It defaults to a headline since we're on the level 10 meeting page. You can do the same thing where you assign an owner, give it a title, and then even assign it out to one or multiple teams. So if this belongs in multiple places, feel free to check off multiple of those items. When we're looking at headlines, we kind of see cascading messages right below that. So this tells us what other teams have sent to us. So we can see this specific item was cascaded from marketing by Cooper. And then right below the cascading messages section, we see our past meetings. So this is just a list of all the past meetings in the account. If we click on these, we'll be able to see a detailed account of what happened during that specific meeting. So headlines you talked about, cascading messages that were sent, issues you solved, to-dos you created. When you hover over these, you get the details of that item. And then you can also open up the details in a new window by clicking that button. Meeting notes are here. You can go through the ratings and then also how long you spend each section. And then, of course, the totals / average, if you're looking at the rating, is right there on the main view as well. And so now actually going through a specific meeting and talking about those, if we go to this Start Meeting button, well, before we do that, do you want to change the timeframes of your meetings? Settings icon up there allows you to change the timeframes of each section. And if you want to switch the team, you can go to a new team and then change the time frame of that specific meeting as well. So now to start the meeting, you click Start Meeting. You've got the team that you can select here. It'll default to whichever one you're viewing, but you can always switch it to a new one. And then once we begin, it essentially takes all of those pages that we were already working on, data, rocks, to-dos, issues, and puts it into the level 10 agenda format. So that's over here on the left-hand side. You can see your timer going. You've got the sections down here below, and you can move through those either by clicking on this button or by just clicking on the section title over there on the left-hand side. The segue section is blank, no room for data entry, but if you'd like to create issues, you of course have the create button there that you can use. And then there, if I move my image over a little bit, there is a show notes section. So if you click on that, it opens up these meeting notes and you can take notes directly within the meeting. So maybe you want to write down anything that happened during the segue or across the board, something that doesn't quite fit into the details section of one of these. You can, of course, save your notes with this specific meeting through that. The scorecard, rocks, and to-do sections are all exactly the same way, whether you're in a meeting or not. So all the functionality is the same, the page works the same. So if you have specific questions on scorecard, which is the data page in the system, rock review, which is rocks, and to-do list, which is the to-dos page, go to those specific videos. The headlines page pulls in the headlines and the cascading messages that we saw on the normal level 10 page on the main portion of the software. And so if you click on these, you can see the details for the items. You can, of course, switch the team if you need to, and you can even cascade these. So this is how you would create a cascading message, is use the More Actions button, click Cascade. It pulls in the details of that item, and then you can choose which teams you would like to send it to. So maybe we'd like to send it to finance and mentorship. And then when we click Save, it'll show up just like this does for our team, where it has, new hire, since that's what we cascaded, and it'll say from leadership team. This is one cascading message that was sent to us. And once we're done reviewing these items, we check it off and mark it as discussed. And this is what signifies to save it with the meeting. So if you don't check it off, it will not save with the meeting. You need to mark it as done. That way it gets into that recap email and then also into the recap that I showed you. To-dos list is extremely similar to the to-dos page, like I mentioned, and then IDS is our issues page, and there's a couple things that change here. The main one being that our top 3 issues are highlighted orange. So we can still see our long-term list. People don't usually come here during the actual meeting, But if you do have anything where you'd like to pull it over, something is due soon, and you'd like to talk about it, you can move it from list to list with that clock icon. On the short-term list, in order to sort these, you have a couple options. One is drag and drop, so you can move those around and it'll resort for you. You have a right click and move to top and bottom of list. And then you can also use the issue selector over here. So if the 1, 2, 3 allows you to say, this is first, this is second, this is third, and it auto sorts those right to the top. Typically during a meeting, when it's time to discuss something, most people will click on it and then take a couple notes in here. So maybe you want to write out meeting notes, maybe you want to put the date, whatever's best for you guys. The benefit of taking some notes in here is that everything's searchable. So if you do want to go back and find something, if it is in your archive, it's easier to find the more details you write down. And then you also have the more actions button where if you cascade anything, if you create any to-dos, it's going to pull in all of those details that you already wrote out, giving whoever you assign that to a lot of context for what was happening during the meeting when you created this. When you're creating a to-do, you can even assign it to multiple people. So in this situation, I've selected 3 names, and now each of those people is going to get a new to-do on their to-do list. Once we save that, we can say, all right, we're done with this issue, mark it as completed, and it'll stay on the list until we actually archive it. We probably don't need to see it anymore, so we'll go ahead and archive all of our completed items there, and then you can leave any unresolved issues on the list for the following week. Marking an issue as done does say to the meeting recap email and save it with the meeting, you have solved this issue. So anything marked as done does get saved with the meeting as well. When we move on to conclude, you can see here's the 3 new to-dos we created. There's a to-do that was left over from the previous week that we'll still see on our list. We can see the 2 cascading messages that we sent. And then we also have the meeting rating section where you can go through and enter the rating for each person. If you don't want to rate these in the same order each week, you can shuffle up the users, and that way a different person rates it first. If I scroll all the way down here, this send meeting recap email is automatically checked off. If you uncheck it, it won't send, but leaving that checked off, make sure that all the headlines that you discussed, aka checked off, are sent. Any of the cascading messages that you sent are right here. If you forgot to create any, you can of course use the create button and add any last minute if you need to, just through this section. The meeting recap email will also have to-dos you created, so anything that's marked as new up at the top, and then it'll also have the issues you discussed and solved, so the issues that you checked off as complete. When I press save and exit, it'll verify that anybody that I didn't rate gets the marking of absent, which is okay in this case. And then it takes this meeting and puts it into the past meetings list. And if you click on this, you can see all of the details within here that we just talked about. The headlines we discussed, the cascading messages, the issues we solved, to-dos we created. We didn't take any notes in that notes section. And then the ratings we did not fill out, and then we can see the time frame of the duration. If you did want to go back in and fill in anything like the ratings, if you press that edit button at the top, it does let you come in here and make some changes. Just be sure when you make that change to come back up and save those that you made. If you created a meeting by accident, you also have the delete meeting option, so you can remove that as well. For actually running the meeting with your team, that gave you a great overview of function, but now how you do it. Most teams will be in the same room and one person will start the meeting and put it up onto a central TV screen. And that way everybody can follow along and not everybody has to have their computer open. If people do want to have their computer open or you're in remote locations, use whatever video conferencing software you're used to using. A Zoom, Google Hangouts, GoToMeeting, anything like that where you can use the screen share is going to be how everybody can follow along that one person who's running the meeting. Right now, just one person runs the meeting so that they can be tracking the issues solved, to-dos created, and everything that happened in the meeting that gets saved and sent in the meeting recap email. If people do want a paper copy or even just like a PDF version of things that are happening during the meeting, feel free to use that print agenda button. The print agenda button will bring up this specific page where you can go through and see in just a list format all of the things that you are going through during the meeting. Headlines, to-dos, issues, all laid out. And that covers everything related to your meeting function. Feel free to reach out, ask more questions, use the chat icon, and good luck in your next level test.